Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Brazil once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the Brazilian beers that I bought from Beerdome down in the Netherlands, who seem to have a very good supply of Brazilian stuff incidentally, so make sure you check them out. But I had long heard that there was a very strong craft beer scene down in Brazil, and the Brazilian beers that I've tried so far would really seem to back that statement up. So it's nice to see that some of their beers are making their way over here to Europe. And long may that continue, and I do hope that this leads to some of the breweries from the other Latin American countries following suit and sending us some stuff over here. The beers are a wee bit more expensive because there's no trade deal between Mercosur and the European Union as far as I'm aware, but hopefully that is something that will change in the future, who knows. But if you do come across some of the Brazilian beers, I recommend that you try some of them. But for this review, we are going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys seem to be very highly regarded. The beer we're trying today is a style that I've had some really nice examples of from Brazil thus far, so fingers crossed it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Caixas do Sul, which is in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in southern Brazil, a bit to the north of Porto Alegre. And we're going to have a look at my first beer from Salvador Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Engesa Oil. It comes in at 11.3% ABV, and this one is a Russian Imperial Stout. So yeah, this one should be a little bit of a monster. This has won various medals in different beer festivals across Brazil from what I understand, and as I said a minute ago, we've had some really nice Imperial Stouts from down there so far. So hopefully this one carries on in the same vein as the other ones that we've had so far. But yeah, definitely cool to feature these guys on the channel, of course, and always nice to feature new beers and breweries from different places as well. But looking forward to this. Let's crack on with the review then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I will hopefully be able to do in the future from Salvador Brewing Company. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Brazilian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite gradually at the moment because I've still got a few Brazilian beers left, and we will no doubt add more to that list going beyond the ones that I have just now. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Salvador Brewing Company. And one of the first things I thought that was quite interesting about these guys was that they call themselves Salvador Brewing rather than Salvador Cervejaria or whatever. But anyway, so Salvador Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Caixas do Sul, which is in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in southern Brazil, a little bit to the north of Porto Alegre. But the brewery was founded back in 2014 by the brothers Andrigo and Leonardo Salvador, hence the name, and the two brothers had homebrewed for a number of years, but a little bit later on from their beginnings, they brewed their beers in a combi truck, and they used to drive this around and attend various different festivals and sell their beers, and this was what they became known for. But later on in 2017, they opened up their tap room in an old 1940s pavilion building to the east of the central district of the city, and it was at this point that Fabian Gasparin, Claudio Costa and Josimar Gross joined the company as partners. Over the following years, they continued to build up their sales and their brewing capacity and things like that, but they decided that they needed a larger production facility. So in 2020, they opened up a new 500 square metre brewery in the Rio Branco area of the city, which is a bit to the south of or the kind of southwest, I guess you could say, of the central district, and this took their brewing capacity from 8,000 litres of beer per month up to about 25,000 litres of beer per month, and they'll be able to increase this even more with the addition of more fermentation tanks. But they're also in the process of starting up a barrel aging program from what I understand, and the interesting thing about this new factory that they have is that it's completely powered by solar energy, which is really cool. Got to save the trees and look after the environment and all of that these days, which is great. But they have a restaurant and tap room on site here, and they also offer brewery tours that you can book, and it was also in the year that they started up there in 2020 that they started exporting their beers as well. The first exports went to Japan, South Korea and to the Netherlands, of course, which is where I got this one. I have had this beer a little bit of time, incidentally. So this might well have been amongst the first batch of it that was exported abroad. But it's a big Imperial Stout. We can afford to let it sit for a wee while. But as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 125 different kinds of beer. And if you have a look through the Untappd list, there seems to be a lot of different styles. But this seems to be one of the more decorated beers that they've done so far. It seems to have won quite a lot of medals and things like that. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Salvador Brewing Company, or Salvador Cervejaria, I guess we can call them as well. But if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's it for your history section. Let's get on and have a look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on the can of this before we open this one up. But the little bit on the side here just talks about how this one is a big oily beer. I had a little look and translated, translated the thing that was on the Untappd there. And obviously I am not familiar with Portuguese, so probably my Portuguese pronunciations in this video have been absolutely horrible. And for that I apologise. But basically this one tells you, basically it's like a big oily Imperial Stout. Let me just check. Do I actually have that translation still open? No, I didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, well, what can we do? But yeah, like I said, this one 11.3% Russian Imperial Stout. That means it's going to be on the roasty toasty side of things, and it kind of tells you on the side of the can as well. That will be 72 IBUs. But yeah, like I say, one of their highly decorated beers, and there you can see on the side the Engesa oil Russian Imperial Stout. 11.3% ABV, 473 milliliter can. So this is 1 American pint, and I'm not sure exactly what I paid for this one. I think it was maybe about 8 or 9 euros. And like I said, Brazilian beer will cost you a little bit more in Europe because there's no trade deal between the Mercosur countries and the European Union. But I don't mind doing that. I buy beer I buy Russian beer, which is a little bit more expensive, and I buy the Brazilian stuff. And it's a novelty. It is a novelty to be able to review these things for you here on the channel. But yeah, this one I believe would have cost me about 9 euros or something like that, and you could easily pay that for a locally brewed beer. But that translates to roughly about £8 sterling, maybe about $10 American, just for those of you watching in different parts of the world. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Plain silver top on the can. But yeah, I think it's about time we tried this one. So yeah, the Engesa oil, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Salvador Brewing Company in Caixas do Sul, Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. I think this one should be pretty damn nice. And look at the pour on this, by the way. Just look at that. This thing is a big, oily monster. But we found that with the Brazilian Stout so far. They're big, oily beasts. But yeah, I think we've got most of it in the can at the moment. And we'll put the rest of it in a little bit later. But this is my nightcap beer, this one. I've had a long weekend of work, so I think it is about time that I had a nice big Imperial Stout to celebrate, if you like. But just before the head disappears on this one, this beer poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, kind of medium to dark tan head. It has faded away to be a kind of, well, it's pretty much nothing. There's just a few little wisps on top of it, but you can see that there is a nice kind of ring lingering around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, medium to dark tan head on this one. It has faded away when this beer is 11.3% ABV. You'd kind of expect that, to be honest. The head isn't going to hang around too long at that level of ABV. But yeah, you can see the colour of this beer, as you would expect, is a lovely dark ebony rosewood. You'd expect this from an Imperial Stout, but yeah, it's pretty much black as night. If you shine the light through this, you do get a wee tiny hint of a sort of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max colour around the very edge. But remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on, one, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. So this will have, the likes of Carafa, black malt, and all these kind of things in it, although the Brazilians are probably producing their own types of malt for these beers these days. But the length of the wort boil is also going to play a role in the colour as well. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. A big Russian Imperial Stout like this is probably going to have a wort boil of like 4 or 5, maybe even more hours. And any barrel aging And adjuncts that you put in the beer are also going to play a role in determining the colour as well. But usually those play more of a role in the likes of sour beers than big imperial stouts like this. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and I can see little bits of particle floating around in this one. So I think it's been kept in the fridge at quite a low temperature, I would say. So yeah, you're going to get a little bit of sediment out of this, and it is, I think, about a year old at least. So yeah, nothing surprised about that. But yeah, in terms of the appearance, this beer is exactly what you would expect of a Russian Imperial Stout. So I think it's about time that we move on to check out the aroma then. So let's go for it then. I think this will be very interesting. Oh yeah, this is a properly old school Russian Imperial Stout, this one. You know, I always enjoy having a bit of variance in my Imperial Stouts. These days, there seems to be so many kind of pastry stouts and sweet stouts out there. It's nice to go back to something that's a little bit more kind of old school, if you like. You know, like the Narwhal from Sierra Nevada, or, you know, a Yeti from Great Divide, 1050 from Oscar Blues. You know, these kind of old school Imperial Stouts, or even, you know, the Herr Fredriksson from Amagerbrewhus, just over the water in Denmark. This is an old school Russian Imperial Stout, this one. I think this is going to be lovely, but beautiful aroma straight away. So yeah, this is going to be awesome. The Brazilians really know what they're doing when it comes to these big malty beers, and generally speaking as well, Brazil, as I say, has a very strong craft beer scene. I do hope I can get over there and visit and film some out and about videos and some brewery interviews, if that's possible. As I say, the barrier to that would be I'm not sure what the English standard is, but if people are involved in the craft beer industry, I guess they have a decent idea. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is definitely that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. On top of that, you can smell a little bit of a kind of slightly sweeter, almost like brown rye bread. So yeah, that's very, very nice. There's definitely some nice big kind of cocoa, chocolatey elements to this beer. So I'd say it's got a lovely kind of smoothness to the chocolate as well. There's 1 or 2 sort of woody elements in this one, so it's got a lovely kind of smooth woody character kind of mixing in with that bread crusty element to it. Maybe 1 or 2 little nutty hints, and maybe a very slight leathery character as well. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one, I think, is absolutely lovely. So big thumbs up to you know, big thumbs up to the brewers for this. The malty backbone of this is lovely, but the chocolatey notes in this are really interesting. So I'd say the chocolatey character in this beer kind of comes in somewhere between, like, you know, 70 or 80% cocoa, something like that. Although it does have a few elements of milkiness to it as well. It's almost got a wee bit of a kind of vanilla quality as well, which I can really appreciate. You do get a wee bit of vanilla out of this one, which is interesting. It didn't say on the can if they'd, or at least it probably does, but I just can't read it. It didn't say in the little blurb thing that I got from Untappd that it had, like, you know, chocolate added as an adjunct, or cocoa powder added as an adjunct into it. But yeah, you certainly get a nice little bit of a kind of sweet chocolate out of this one as well. There is an element of brown sugar to this beer too, but I don't think it comes out. It doesn't seem like it's the most prominent component of the beer, but you certainly get you do get a wee bit of a kind of treacle molasses type sweetness in the middle of the nose with this one. There's a wee bit of a sweet kind of caramel in there as well, and maybe a bit of a toasty brown sugar as well. So yeah, I really like how how this one goes together in a sense. It's got a lovely big silky nose to it, and you just get the feeling this is going to be very, very nice. But yeah, it's got a lovely balance in it between the kind of roasty, toasty backbone, the lovely kind of smooth kind of bready characters to it as well, and then a kind of silky chocolate and sweeter, slightly toasty caramel, and it's got all these kind of woody, nutty subtleties and slight vanilla as well that you would expect of this style. Let me just have a wee look and see. Can I figure out if this has got things in it? It just says, yeah, malta de cevada, aveia de flocos, lactose, azúcar. Okay, so it does have lactose in it. That makes sense then why it's so malta de trigo, lupulo and levadura. So yeah, it does have a wee bit of lactose and sugar added into it. So maybe that's the lactose will be the reason why it smells so kind of silky, if you like. So yeah, Russian Imperial Stout with a little bit of lactose in it. That makes sense to be honest with you. But even so, it does smell pretty old school actually, so there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I think we've covered the kind of malty side of the aroma in this one fairly well, but let's look at the hoppy and fruity side of things then. Remember, as I say, I've had this beer a little while, I think maybe about a year. I think this one was in the first Brazilian order that I got from Beer Dome. This might be the last one actually from that order, come to think of it. Yeah, it certainly has a nice, you still get a little bit of a kind of hoppy character, but remember, the longer you keep these beers, the more the hoppy character will drop out of them. But there's certainly a little bit of a kind of earthiness to this one remaining. There's a wee bit of smoothness, and you can get the remnants of a little bit of floral character and a wee bit of a grassiness as well. You do get these just kind of lingering there, but the longer you keep these beers, of course, the more the hoppy character is going to drop out of this one. But the fruity side of the beer is certainly still going strong with this, and it's kind of what you'd expect. I mean, I don't really get a raisiny element to this one. I do get a little bit of a kind of rich, juicy plum. There's definitely some kind of figgy elements in there, and you've also got a wee bit of a blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing to this beer as well. But the fruits come across as quite sweet, but also quite oily. But there's not really that sharp, slightly raisiny note to this one. You do get a teeny bit of it, but not that much. More a juicy plum, as I say, fig, black currants, and blackberries. So yeah, I like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one, I think, is big, silky and smooth, and I really like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, big, how do you say, yeah, big smelling Imperial Stout, this one. Lovely and old school, but still silky and smooth actually, and that'll be down to the lactose. And I'm guessing that it's probably, when it says it's got a sucre in it, I'm guessing it's maybe like, you know, one of the, you know, I'm forgetting the name of it now, muscovado sugar, perhaps, potentially. It smells something like this. There's probably a lovely little bit of brown sugar in this one, but yeah, it smells like a beautiful beer. But I think it's about time for us to taste this one now. So yeah, this one is the Engesa, if I pronounce that right, the Engesa oil, coming in at 11.3% ABV, a Russian Imperial Stout from Salvador Brewing Company, or Salvador Cervejaria, from Caixas do Sul, Rio Grande do Sul, down in Brazil. Let's get stuck into this one then. Slanja, skål, cheers, or as they say in Portuguese, felicidades. There we go. Yeah, that is pretty damn good, I have to say. Very silky, very smooth, this one. It's interesting, this, because it's almost like a hybrid of a kind of Imperial milk stout and a Russian Imperial. You know, it definitely gives you a wee bit of the kind of roasty, toasty sort of things that you'd expect of a Russian Imperial Stout, but it's just got such a silky smoothness to it that it comes across almost like an Imperial milk stout. But whatever it is, and you can debate what exact style this beer would be, I guess, to a degree. It's lovely. I mean, so thumbs up to the Salvador guys for this. This is lovely. So yeah, I can see right away why this beer has won awards. Let me just get the rest of it out into the glass here. But you know, the Cinco Elementos that we had in the big bottle, that was another very, very good stout. And I think these ones are, you know, really, really highly regarded. When I was seeing the list that this one was in, there was the Cinco Elementos Abyssal, and there was a beer from one of the other breweries that we reviewed recently whose name have gone out of my head. But this beer seems to be one of the kind of really old school Russian Imperial Stouts in Brazil, and it seems very highly regarded. So it is pretty cool actually to have this one to review for you here on the channel as my first from this brewery, and hopefully not my last actually. But yeah, this is really damn good actually. So yeah, if you get the chance to try this beer, this is definitely worth it. But let's try and break down the flavour for you a little bit more and describe it more succinctly. So in terms of the backbone of this beer, then middle third and back third of your palate, straight away across that middle and back third of your palate, there's a lovely kind of you do get a bit of that kind of smooth bread crusty element to it. You can feel that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty element just going right across the middle of your palate and into the back third of things. On top of that, you've got a kind of thicker, brown bready sort of thing. And I do like that. It's got the bread actually has a lovely little bit of sweetness to it as well. It's almost like a kind of rye bread in a sense, and I do miss the German rye breads that I used to have in Heidelberg down in Germany when I was living there. And yeah, it does remind me of that a little bit. But if we focus on that middle third of the palate for the moment, in there you get, as I say, toasty, well-fired bread crust and a bit of the smooth brown bread. If you go into the front half of that, middle third of your tongue, you do get one or two little vanilla undertones to it. You get some woodiness and maybe just even a wee slight hint of nuttiness out of the beer as well. So I really like how that goes about its business too. But yeah, you know, on top of that, you've got, you know, on top of that, you can feel the lactose really kind of smoothening, you know, sort of smoothening everything out there. And I really, really like how that goes about its business in a sense. The lactose has a really nice effect and just makes the beer feel lovely and silky in a sense. And that sort of aids the chocolatey part of the beer as well. So you can feel that on, you know, mixing in with the lactose, you get at the back of that middle third of your palate, you get a slightly more bitter cocoa chocolate, but then as you go forward it becomes a little bit more milky. So it's almost like you're going from, say, a 70% cocoa chocolate up to maybe a 50 or a 40% cocoa chocolate. So you can feel it getting sweeter and sweeter as you go further forward on the palate there, which I really, really like. And then on top of that kind of lactosey layer, if you like, you can feel there's like a little oval, there's a kind of oval sitting on top of that, and that's where you get the sweet kind of brown sugary element. So you get a lovely big oily caramel sitting in the middle of that, and then as you move further out, I wouldn't even call this, I don't know, there could be a little bit of a treacly molasses sort of thing there, maybe right in the middle of the palate, but certainly as you move further out from that, it becomes a little bit more sweeter and more caramelly, and then as you push out towards the edges of that middle third of your palate, it's certainly a little bit more kind of like a roasty toasty caramel that you get out of this one. But it's not too intense in a sense, it just kind of sits there, and it's quite chilled actually. But you can also feel that the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, the woodiness, the slight vanilla I think comes out of the beer a wee bit more, but you also get a wee bit more of the toasty brown sugars lingering there as well, and also a wee bit of the black malt. So I do like the you know, I do like the way that the brown sugary characters come out of this beer. Absolutely, this one goes together very, very nicely, I have to say. So big thumbs up to Salvador for the malty backbone of this beer. They've got it down to a T. But yeah, that is the middle third of your palate. I think we can move on to the other parts of the beer now. So on that note then, onto the back third of your palate then. So you can feel in that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, and you can feel a more intense bread crust, and it's almost like a slightly bigger, it's almost like a kind of slightly bigger kind of cakey chocolate brownie sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting that you can feel that in there. But the base of that back third of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit more of a kind of the well-fired bread crusty notes get a little bit more intense on this one. The brown bready character is a little bit less sweet in a sense too, and a wee bit more grainy, so you can feel that sitting on top of it. And then on top of all of that, you can feel the more airy bready yeasty esters out of that. So you've got a slightly softer and almost slightly sweeter brown bready note sitting on top of the kind of rye bready type layer there, and you can feel the flavour at the back. On the back third of your palate is a little bit taller, so as you start from the back of your palate and move forward, you can feel the flavour just goes like this, it condenses down, then as you go into that middle third of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of squashed together as you go further forward. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business from that perspective as well. So yeah, on the, you know, I think on the malty yeasty side of things, this beer really is very, very nice. And as I say, you get a wee bit more roasty toastiness out of it further into the aftertaste, but you also get a slightly sweeter woody kind of element, and almost a little bit more of the vanilla coming out later on too. So yeah, interesting stuff. So yeah, on the on the hoppy side of things then, on the hoppy side of things with this beer, it does go together. It does go together quite nicely. And you can feel the hoppiness, of course, as I said earlier, will have dropped out of this beer a little bit, but you still get the remnants of it, and it kind of blends in with everything else really nicely. But yeah, let's describe that a wee bit more in depth. So on the back corners of the palate, you definitely get a nice little bit of earthiness out of this one, absolutely. But as you move further forward, it kind of smoothens out a little bit and it gets a little touch herbal. But as you move towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity coming out of the beer as well. So I do like how the beer goes about its business in that sense too. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more. It's a little bit lighter and more sort of grassy in a sense as well. So you get that, but the grassy notes on this beer aren't too intense actually. It's got a little bit. It has got a wee bit of a more just a little bit of smoothness and things to it, and a little touch of zestiness as well. But yeah, I like how the beer goes about its business in that sense. Absolutely, the green component of this one is quite relaxed and quite smooth, but again, I've had this beer a little while, so it's over a year old, probably even more than that, maybe a year and a half, 2 years something, but you certainly still get the remnants of the hoppy character as well. But I think on that note, we can move on to the fruity side of the beer then in the front third of your palate. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up there, but it's almost a little bit more kind of thick and chocolate brownie like on the front third of your palate. Wee bit of a kind of grainy bread crust sitting either side though, but the base of that front third of your palate is a kind of smoother, it is a little bit of a kind of smoother brown bready bread crust that kind of sits underneath it, but on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity beer, where those juicy fruity esters from the hops roll their way out of this one, and this is also something really nice about this beer too. So let's just break that part of the beer down for you as well. So yeah, like I was picking up in the aroma, this one's quite interesting because you don't get such a sharp raisiny note out of this one. You get a wee bit of it, but then on that back half of that front third of your palate, there is certainly more of a kind of juicy plummy note to it, and there's also a little bit of a dried kind of pruny quality as well, which is kind of interesting. It gets a little bit more datey as you move kind of further forward from that. So I really like how that goes together in this one. But as you move further forward from the more the fruity part of this beer does have a lovely bit of dryness to it, but as you move further forward from that, there's a nice wee bit of a kind of figgy quality in there, and as you move into that front half of the front third of your tongue, you get the figgy notes kind of changing to be more sort of blackcurranty, and on top of the blackcurrant you get a bit more of an oily blackberry type flavour out of this one, and that lingers there into the aftertaste. And I say the blackberry is potentially the most prominent part of the fruity character, along with the kind of more dry pruny notes as well. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is very, very nicely done. So big thumbs up once again to Salvador Brewing for this Salvador Cervejaria. But yeah, lovely beer this one. It's a nice slow sipper this one. I'm going to enjoy this for a wee while after we finish the video anyway. But yeah, on to the mouthfeel then to round off. So the mouthfeel of this beer, absolutely, it's full bodied. It's not the heaviest stout that I've come across, and not even the heaviest one from Brazil thus far, but it's still got a nice big body to it. The carbonation is very, very smooth, as I was saying, that you can tell from the aroma. This is a big silky Imperial stout. I really like how it goes about its business. Yeah, full bodied, lovely smoothness, big silky mouthfeel. Lovely stuff. The 70, I think it said, was it 72 IBUs this one had? I don't know if I would pick that up from the flavour. I probably would have thought this was about a kind of 50 or 60 IBU beer, in fairness, because it's the lactose has a real almost calming effect on this beer, and like I said, this one almost stylistically it almost comes across as a little bit of a hybrid between an Imperial milk stout and a Russian Imperial. So you do get a wee bit of the bitterness on the back half of the palate, but the middle, more malty part of the beer certainly gives you more of a kind of Imperial milk stout type vibe. So that's an interesting that is an interesting point about this beer. So yeah, stylistically speaking, this one, the bitterness is a little bit, yeah, the bitterness I would find a little bit hard to kind of pick up on it, but regardless, that's a minor point. It's a very good beer. The malty character of the beer, as we said, it's got a lovely kind of roasty, toasty backbone to it, a few kind of woody, vanilla, sweet elements in there, smooth bread, silky, slightly sweet chocolate, and then a wee bit of brown sugar notes. It's got everything you would want from a Russian Imperial Stout. The fruity notes are kind of lovely and juicy, and yeah, there is a wee bit of bitterness to this one, but 72 IBUs, I think I would find that quite hard to detect had I not seen it on the can, of course. But yeah, I think that sums up this beer a lot. So like I said, it's a beautiful, beautiful Imperial Stout. This one, a little bit of a hybrid between a Russian Imperial Stout. It gives you a bit more of the Russian Imperial Stout in the aftertaste, but in the kind of front of the taste, I would say it does come across as a little bit more of an Imperial Milk Stout. But another beautiful beer from Brazil, and I'm not surprised. This one, from what I read, is very, very highly regarded, and it's one of the kind of old school Imperial Stouts in the country too. But yeah, I think we can round off the review there then. So this one is the Engesa oil, an 11.3% Russian Imperial Stout from Salvador Brewing Company, or Salvador Cervejaria Salvador, I guess we would say, from Caixas do Sul, in Rio Grande do Sul, to the north of Porto Alegre in southern Brazil. Really cool to get this review for you here on the channel, and we do have, I believe, another 3 Imperial Stouts that we'll be looking at, and that'll be the last of the Brazilian beers for at the moment, of course, but we will do more beyond those 3 in the future. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite let me know what your favourite beers are from Salvador as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the future. And do give me some other Brazilian beer and brewery recommendations in the comment section below as well. You guys have been good at giving recommendations in the other videos, so keep those coming, and hopefully we can get some as well. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Salvador's social media, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thank you for watching.